Hello! In this video, we will do a deep dive into mWater's new customer management and billing, meter reading, and accounting features. We've created these three modules to help you manage your water utility work more effectively, increase your operational efficiency, sustainability, and help you make data-driven decisions. With customer management and billing, you can create records for each of your customers and link them to assets that you may have mapped for your water systems. You can then generate invoices, create bills, and track any payments that come through. With the meter reading module, you can use mWater's existing Surveyor app to visit those customers and record water usage, applying various kinds of tariffs and automatic periodic billing. And if you want, you can also enable our full accounting suite, which is a fully fledged double entry bookkeeping system where you can create and use a full chart of accounts and keep track of all the financial income and expenses, transactions that have to do with your water utility. Before we take a hands-on look at how this works in mWater, I'll just say a few words about our broader vision for professionalizing WASH in low resource regions. There's a blog post related to this as well that I will link in the video notes where you can read about it in more detail. But overall, our vision is a world where access to safely managed piped water is a reality for the vast majority of people. And as this happens, as small towns and rural areas have more and more access to piped water networks, operational complexity grows as well. So therefore, managing customers, tracking usage, billing things accurately, and maintaining a utility's financial health are bigger and bigger challenges. Often in this space, software that helps you do this is prohibitively expensive for these kinds of contexts, where there isn't much money available to invest. That's why we've created these features and made them available as part of mWater's free set of features, which you can use for any number of water systems, any number of customers, and so on. This fits into our broader vision of providing a set of tools for water service providers. Some years ago, we developed a global water asset standard, which we then implemented in mWater, which allows you to track all the physical assets of your water utility, like water points, pipes, tanks, generators, and so on, to see what's there. At the start of 2025, we released our water supply planning tool that helps guide data-driven discussions around various scenarios on how you might expand water service. And now, in the middle of 2025, we're releasing these customer features of customer management, meter reading, and accounting. Just to mention, we'll next begin work on workflows that digitize maintenance and other processes, as well as customer service ticketing, to give this full rounded set of features touching on most aspects of water utility work. Okay, let's take a look at how this actually works in mWater now. I'm here on the mWater portal homepage, and since these features are existing at the water system level, I will find the customer management, meter reading, and accounting features here. I'll take a look first at an existing system. This demonstration utility, where the features I'm talking about today are all within this accounting branch in the left side nav bar. So we'll be looking at this customer overview, which is a command center that gives you key information based on these three modules. We can look at customer details, meter reading, accounts, individual transactions, vendors, as well as the automatically generated reports of profit and loss and balance sheet. All of these elements. And here is the customer overview, where the system will display key performance indicators if you have that data put into the platform. And that just highlights the general way in which we try to design the platform and the water system features such that the more information you put in, the system helps you automatically get more value out. So if you do billing, if you do tracking of customer money coming in, you will get a collection rate calculated for you, and you will see what meters remain to be read, for example, in this chart. How many days has it been since the last meter reading? And if there are ones like here, a yellow site, customer needs to get a new meter reading sooner rather than later. Okay, so here's an established system. The customer list shows all the customers that you have tracked, their current total balance, key information about them, as well as any bills that might have been created to show how much is outstanding, what is the balance due. Meter reading can be done here in the portal or through the app, and each meter reading is recorded. The accounting module is for when you have true accounting expertise at your disposal. So for example, if you do have an accountant, in which case you will be able to track all of your transactions. And we'll take a look at that in detail later. But you'll also be able to display your financial viability and find areas that need more focus and improvement. So how do we set this up? We have a guide written for this in the Help Center, where I can look for the Customer Billing Management Guide. And we can see the steps needed to set up these modules and then how to tackle individual tasks. But setting up your management features, customer management features, is very simple. We can do that in a live system now. Basically a 3-step process. So let's assume that you already have a water system mapped in mWater. If you don't, it's quick to start mapping one. We have guides on how to do that. But here we have a very straightforward small scale utility. We see some pipes that have been mapped, a water source, and then a few household connections where we don't have customer records yet. So this is our Goodwill water utility. Now, to begin setting up your accounting system and all of the modules, you can click any of these options here on the left. It says setting up an accounting system. Even if you don't activate full accounting, there is an accounting system activated in the background to allow you to track meter readings as transactions, which is fundamental to how the system works. We click Set Up Accounting System, and we make a few choices, 1, 2, 3. First, we choose the financial structure, the chart of accounts. So this is a categorized list, for example, of income, expenses, assets, that helps you organize all your financial transactions. So the basic option is the simplified chart of accounts. That is a great starting point. If you have a pre-established chart of accounts, don't worry, you can customize each account as you like. If you have a larger utility, you may want to use the standard chart of accounts. This has been based on our collaboration with Indonesian PDAMs, so water utilities. If you have that custom, your own chart of accounts ready, you may want to begin with a blank chart of accounts instead. But in this example, I will go the recommended route and create the simplified chart of accounts. Now, customer management is enabled by default. Meter reading is something you can turn on and off. You can turn it off later. And full accounting is also something that you don't have to turn on if you are just trying to keep track of your customers. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I will just enable everything. Now, bills can be generated once per month. So if there's a regular fee that each customer based on their tariff needs to accrue, you can set when that happens, change it later. You can also make sure that you're using the local currency. And that's it. Once you've made these 3 decisions, the system will go through a process of setting up the modules for you. So behind the scenes, it creates this accounting system, even if you're not opting to use the full set of features. Once this is done, a few more options emerge. You can customize your bill. We'll take a look at what bills look like later. You can enter a title, that shows up at the top, a footer, which you can see at the bottom of the bill and can include things like disclaimers, terms and conditions, and note that you can use markdown formatting, which you can find online, so you can bold the text, add links and things. And finally, you can add a logo that shows at the top of the bill as well to customize it and make it your own. Then we have permission management. This is functionality based. So I'll just cover it now that we're here. I will add my test account for future use here. And you can see there are a number of roles and permissions you can grant this user or group of users. So you can add a whole branch from your organization. An admin has full control over all of the features in these modules. Counting transactions means that you can edit, add, remove transactions. So it's very powerful, but you can't do this kind of customization of the whole accounting system. Viewing full accounting allows a user to see all transactions. This might not be necessary for most users. If you can manage customers, you can add them, update them, and remove them. Meter readers, even if they just use the app, should be added as with the permission to read meters. Often also, they might have the ability to record customer charges. You could do that on the phone in the Surveyor app. You can do that in the portal. You can even import customer charges through spreadsheets from financial systems you might be using. And you can record customer payments if they are paying money. Finally, we'll take a look later at how you can limit users to routes once we've set some up. So if you have a large utility with many customers, you may want to have certain meter readers only collecting data from a certain group of connections and meters. This is what allows you to do that. I will allow this user to do meter readings and add new customers. And then save where necessary. And there's an option to delete the accounting system here. Okay, so we've set up our accounting system, our modules here, and now we see all these options showing up on the left. Now that we've set up our modules, we could go and add new customers to the customer page, tariffs through meters, and then meter readings, and then even go to adding new transactions as we like. But before we do that, let's spend a little bit of time understanding the types of data we have in accounting and doing a bit more setup. So let's go through the definitions of the types of data underpinning this system together. This dashboard is also available in other languages if you want to study it on your own time. But in this accounting system, and remember this system is active even if you're not using the full accounting features, customers are a record associated with a person, household, or institution, like a business or school, that pays to receive a good or service from the company. For water utilities, that's of course your end users. So households, businesses, churches, and schools, and so on. Now, customers have one or more customer accounts. So in most cases, you will just want one customer account, but you may, in certain cases, want to have and need to have more than one. For example, if a certain customer with a certain customer contact has multiple properties, each buying water, or if there's a single address and different tenants with different accounts live there over time. A vendor here is an account associated with some person, business, or institution that provides a good or service to the company for payment. So this could be a pipe supply store, gas station, employees themselves, electricity providers, and so on. You can use these vendor features if you're doing full accounting. And then we have the concept of accounts. This is a record in the general ledger that is used to collect and store similar information. These can include assets, for example, bank accounts, petty cash, accounts receivable, as we'll see, liabilities, which include accounts payable, loans, and so on, equity, so the equity of stakeholders or owners, or the net assets of a not-profit. Revenue, so that's money coming through, such as water sales, penalties, installation fees, and so on, and various expenses like paying for electricity, gas, water, cleaning, disinfection, supplies, employees, and so on. A transaction is any business event that has a monetary impact on financial statements of a company. And in double entry bookkeeping, if you're using those features, transactions credit one account and debit another by the same amount. So that's why they have to have a from account and a to account, a date and an amount. And bills are statements issued to customers that show their current balance along with payments and debts incurred since the last statement. If you want to really understand how this works in depth, we do have a link for that here in the guide. The 5 types of accounts is what we covered there. And since we've chosen to use the simplified standard chart of accounts, that's all there. But before we move on to adding customers, let's also understand tariffs. So if you want to do meter reading for customers and at the same time create a charge for those customers, you need to set up a tariff. These are the rates at which charges are applied to customers every month based on if it's a fixed fee on a regular basis or based on volume consumed. So each customer at any given time has a tariff that's applied to them. But one tariff can have different costs, different values based on a time. So if this year costs are something, and then next year they go up by 20%, the system can handle that. The steps to add a new tariff are to go to the meters section, click the meter reading setup button, add a tariff, and fill out the details. So we'll do that and then start adding customers. Once we've added customers, we'll add some meter readings, and because we have tariffs assigned, we'll see the charges get created. So let's do that now. Here in the Goodwill Water Utility, let's go to meters and set up our residential tariff. So we have this option to set up tariffs here or up there at the meter reading setup stage. You can have any number of tariffs. Let's add a residential tariff. So what do we charge our household users? We can link it to our residential sales account. See that we have these options here. It's an active one, and let's say it's a meter rate. So that means instead of just a fixed fee like a standing charge, we can have that. So we could have a residential just sort of standing charge that gets applied on the 1st of every month, always in force, but we could apply a fixed start and end date. So this year it's 2 shillings in our example, and next year it's going to be 3, for example. Why don't we do that? So from now till the end of the year, we'll have a 2 shilling fixed fee, and then we can set it up such that next year, starting January, we will have a new fixed fee. So this is going to be charged every 1st of the month. And then let's assume there's a meter reading, a meter rate based on the consumption. So here we can start adding our meter rate. And here we can have block tariffs as well for different volumes. So let's say it's 1 per cubic meter. And there can be a fixed fee that we pay each time there's a minimum volume that's reached. let's say that there's a 2 cubic meter minimum volume and a 10 cubic meter maximum volume before the next fee starts. And in our next example, maybe it gets more expensive if we go above the 10 cubic meter minimum volume. So now if the consumption for a household is above 10 cubic meters in a metering interval, we will get charged. It will get charged more under this tariff. That's just an example. You can have many of these. And of course now you could start creating an industrial tariff and so on. Whilst we're here, notice that you can also define these meter routes. Meter routes, you could have, for example, north side, north of the main road in our little community, and then south side. But these are entirely up to you to decide how these work. We'll see this in practice later on. But imagine these as like the path, the set of houses or connections that one person or group of people are meant to visit. So if you have a team that should always check the north side and another technical team, a meter reader team that goes to the south side, then you can delineate that and have as many routes as you need. So now we've got our meter readings set up. Let's go to customers and start adding some. Have an example customer here. Let's edit that. The steps are the same. A customer record has a unique customer ID that you add. So it has to be unique for their system. You have to have a name. You can have an address, you can have a phone, and you can have notes. So you could say, this is how you reach the person. Notice that each customer must have an account. Save this and create a new one, all the way from scratch. So here we could have CR already Jack Go. And we see we need to add a customer account. Now we had AC1, so we can have AC002 or whatever your convention is. By default, we set the account receivable account to the water service receivables. There don't tend to be many. The water connection here is if you have mapped water points or water connection assets in your system, you will then see them here as options. So there is already an asset mapped here. And if that asset has a meter ID field filled in, it will show up here. Now we can set the tariff that belongs to this, or this customer belongs to. You can also say, are they north or south of the road? I happen to know they're on the north side. So they're on the north side route. Could add another customer account or as many as needed, but in most cases, one customer account is enough. So now we've created the customer. I'll show you how this works in the app as well. Let's go to the app. Here on the right side, we now have my test account. If I have a user in the system that I've set to have permissions, customer management permissions, meter reading permissions, I should be able to go to the app and view the system. They also need to be part of the water system, the organization that manages it if it's a private system. Now, as soon as you are part of one or more water systems where customer management is enabled and you're in the standard app configuration, a customer button will automatically become visible. Clicking that, you will see the list of systems available to you. And if I click Goodwill Water Utility, I'll find the 2 users that are there. Otherwise, the process will be the same. We had CR003, a more, and if we add another account ID, we want to make sure they exist as well. So perhaps on the south side. Note that you can also add an opening balance. So what is the starting balance in this system of this customer? And you may have that because there's an initial connection charge, or it might be carried over from another system you're using. But the flow is very much the same. Here we have added a few customers to our customer list. Now let's see what we can do with that. We can click into any of our customers and see each customer account. As long as we've added a tariff for a customer, we can record a meter reading here in the portal as we can in the app. It's also possible to record payments from the customer as well as additional charges. Maintenance fees, regular fees, installation charges, whatever that might be. So to record a meter reading, we click record meter reading. If there is already a previous meter reading, the system will show it here. Let's say it starts from 0 and goes up to 22. It will then calculate the volume as the difference between these two. And here it will apply the tariffs that we have defined. In our case, we have two different tariffs where the second one comes into play after the volume goes beyond 10 cubic meters. There were fixed fees involved as well, so we get a total of 29 Ugandan shillings in this example now owed by the customer for this consumption. Now, it's also possible to take an optional photo of the meter as a verification method. So you can take a picture with your smartphone of the meter reading to prove that that's what's been entered here. We can save the meter reading and we'll see that it gets recorded here. Now, if the customer, for example, inside with mobile pay, mobile money, paid it right away, we could record that payment. To be clear, we're just recording that this payment happened. There is no way in mWater to actually make that payment appear in your bank account. We are just recording what the customer did, and we need to pick the right kind of account. Was it as cash? Was it to a bank account or some other account? Let's say it came through a mobile app to our bank account. We can give any note we like to go with this payment. Save it, and we see that this payment has happened, and that created a transaction we can review also under transactions. Now, if we wanted to record some charge, we could also do that. Miscellaneous expenses, extraordinary expenses, connection fees. Let's say there was a connection fee . Call it that's still outstanding. We could ask for another payment and so on. So this is the bread and butter, the core of recording meter readings, payments and charges for your customers. Now you see that there's a bills tab here as there is on the customers page. However, bills are only generated on a given day of the month, so they haven't been created here yet. We can see from our accounting configuration that it will be the first of the month where bills get created for all the customers. But let's take a look at an existing bill in another system now that we're there. We also can take a look at the customer overview. Here's another example system where bills have been generated, where we see a longer list of customers. Can take a look at bills and look at an example bill by clicking into it. We have a logo, a QR code. We can print our bill, each page as necessary. We see the tariff that the customer is on in addition to their details, the previous balance if there was any, the currently due balance, the meter readings, charges and payments, as well as the terms and conditions we have happened to have written down in our configuration. So this is an example of a bill. Take a look at another one. We see that the logo, the title, text, and footer are the same, and the details of the customer and payments and so on change. So these are bills. They get generated monthly on the date that you've set. Back to our main system. Now that we have some customers, we start to get value from our customer map. We can get the total accounts receivable, so that's the AT for that one customer of the connection charge. We have 2 active customer accounts so far, and 1 meter has been read. That matches exactly what we've done. However, we don't have a collection rate because we don't have a bill issued yet. The map becomes useful because we can see that this customer here, Jack Doe, has paid up, or there's no outstanding balance, whereas we should see that Jane Smith has an outstanding balance of 80, as is shown in the top right corner. Now, if I wanted to look at where the meter readings are due, I can see that this connection has no meter reading at all, and this connection has a meter reading done in the last 30 days. In this instance, just the same day. Let's take a look at meters as the page. Next. Here we see each individual meter reading. We've already taken a look at setting up meter readings. This is where we set up tariffs. We can record meter readings right from this page. Let's get one for Jack. Let's assume that this was done a week ago. There was a previous meter reading, and now we have a new one. It comes to 30 shillings. We can filter this by date, and we can filter this by customer. Let's take a look at transactions. The transactions page will show all the transactions that you've logged. Notice that the meter readings that we have created become transactions because they create these debts that the customer owes. That's the meaning of this meter reading on a tariff, is that it has accrued a charge for the customer. We can click into any transaction and see their details and make changes. We also see that we have our payment going from water service receivables to our bank account. This was the payment that we recorded Jane Smith as having made. Now, if you enable full accounting and you have your chart of accounts, this is the place where you can either add transactions one by one to track them or import a whole spreadsheet of transactions. You can do this periodically in cases where you have a financial system running, for example, and you want to export every day, every week, or every month data from there and bring it into mWater to see it here. But now let's just add a transaction. Let's imagine we have a cost for our pipeline maintenance. So we can say the money went from our bank accounts to, we found treatment plants, distribution network, pipeline maintenance, 512-100. And it was 450. Just as an example. So here we've just tracked an arbitrary payment that we imagine our utility has created. And you can do the same for any options. We recommend having somebody with accounting training using the full accounting suite, but let's spend some time also looking at the chart of accounts. So this is the simplified standard chart of accounts that currently comes as you set up your accounting and choose that option. There are a number of asset accounts, cash on hand, bank accounts, receivables, all the way to office equipment, tools and machinery. Things that become assets of value for your utility. If you click into an account, you'll see what the balance is at the moment and what the transactions against that account have been in a time period. So in this case, for water service receivables, we have created 3 debits and have 1 credit. We can also look at our chart of accounts and the liabilities, what we owe. What is our equity, opening balance in this case. Revenue, so far that for us will be residential water consumption, but we might have things like revenue from industrial and commercial clients, the government, money coming in interest on our investments, grants, or something else. And there are a whole host of different categories of expenses that we might accrue in running our water utility. If you want to add an account, you can do so. You have to choose which of the 5 standard accounting types it is, and then a category for it. These are the basic categories available. And here you can then create a unique ending to the account category and give it a name. So maybe we would have rental kiosk or something. And we want to specify our land and buildings further. So we would then see this kiosks asset. If you wanted to take your set of assets and your accounts into more detail, like in this example. So you can change and add assets, accounts. Now let's take a look at the remaining sections of our accounting options. Vendors were counterparties that you owe money to. So it could be chlorine seller somewhere, and there would be trade payables in this standard simplified set. So that means that you could then track expenses or payments to these vendors. They're not customers, but you might want to be able to see how much money are you owing a certain vendor, or do they owe you, or how much money is being spent overall for things like chlorine. So since this vendor is a chlorine seller, we have paid them something for treatment chemicals. Monthly. So in this way, we can start building a picture of what's going to vendors. We then have our profit, loss, and balance sheet values. We can see what the revenue has been, very simple in our simplified example case, of the residential water consumption money that we are owed, and the connection fees. And our expenses here are the pipeline maintenance we entered as a transaction, and treatment chemicals we entered as a transaction through the vendor. Seeing that with this set of statistics, not having counted our other connections yet and established them, we are not making a profit yet. So this shows your profit and loss for a given time period. With the balance sheet, we see what the balance across the various categories was on a given date. So we can look at the specific date and see what the reality was at that time. You can print this report as well as the profit and loss one. I'll emphasize that you can access these transactions and all this data in any of the dashboards, data grids, maps, and things you create in mWater, as usual. So we'll take a look at that as well. But now let's return to the customer overview, see that it's been updated, and realize that we have some more customers that we have not actually mapped yet. So we have some more connections here, and we haven't mapped those yet. This means it's a good time to look at how to import data into the system from a spreadsheet. So if I go to customers, I can click import customers to get to the import page. This is where I can upload an Excel file with all the information needed to create those customer records. I can download my spreadsheet template from this button. I have one ready here, and this is what it looks like. We already created Jack, so we can remove them, and we have 3 more customers to add. We need to add, let's see what we need to add from this list here. The customer code is required, and it needs to be unique. The customer name also required, if it's a new customer. We can leave this blank, but it will default to active anyway. We can then add the address, phone, and notes, which we have here, the address and the phone. We create an account or add an account code. So this uniquely identifies the customer's account, remembering that we typically have one, but may have many. Uses the default accounts receivable, unless we specify it otherwise. And this will already create the customer records. Now we are filling out the customer account information. Here, if we want, we can establish an opening balance. So for one customer, we will say there's an opening balance of 100. And for all of the customers, we will place them on the existing residential tariff, which I've typed in here as an option. And I'm also linking these customers to the connections we have. So how am I doing that? Let's take a look. These asset codes are the unique IDs that the system has assigned to these customers. So if I look at customer Roger Moore, I can see that the unique ID is this one ending in 179. Here I see that I've added that asset code. So this tells the system to link this customer to that connection. Remembering that only the assets that are of type connection and water point are possible houses. We recommend using connection. Now, if we are happy with our import file, we can go back to the customer import page and drag our file If the data is validated, we can confirm our import and get a message saying our customers have been imported. Now I'll see them all in my customer list, as well as my customer overview. The same principle applies for importing any transactions, which we'll take a look at next. Now we see that these 3 customers have been imported and show up in our overview. We also see that the customer with the outstanding balance of 100 is flagged on our map. No bills have been generated yet, so we don't see outstanding balances in this table, and we've only done meter readings for this month, so we see a simple chart here. We get a more detailed customer list as a mWater data grid here, and once we've imported transactions, we can take a look at creating this custom console as our very own one that we can change. But to be complete, let's take a look at importing transactions. The flow is similar to importing customers. We go to this transaction import page, have a template we can download, and then the fields we can look at. Here's my example import, where we have the date of the transaction, the from account, to account, and amounts. These codes I've looked up. The customer accounts, so which customers, which account is it for, And if these were meter readings, I could also include meter start, meter end. So let's just double check our accounts. 112,100 is water service receivables. So there's money coming from customers to 112,200 to our bank account. So this means that we have received money from customers. We could import another one, a separate thing. Maybe we had something like going the other way from our bank account to raw water costs, producing water, 511100, costing 24, but not relevant to a customer in this case. So let's just try importing these three customer transactions. We go back to the transactions page, click import transactions, drag our file there, and import away. Now we should see these three further transactions here, 30, 70, and 50. 30, 50, and 70. And this will show up in our system just as we expect. So we have different amount for a total account receivable. And once bills are generated, we'll get a value for the collection rate. So the final thing left to cover is how do you take these building blocks that we've looked at, creating customers in the app or in the portal, doing meter readings on tariffs that you've created, as well as collecting any and entering any transactions into the accounting system. How do you do more with this using the powerful mapping and visualization features in mWater? Well, you can start building any dashboard, any console, any map or data grid, and point it to the accounting system and meter reading data that you have available. But the quickest way is to go to your customer overview and create it as a custom console. This just turns this whole thing into a console you can control. So then we can see what's happening if we go into edit mode for each of these things. And we can see that if we look at data sources, there is a big set of possible data sources to do with your accounting system. All the account categories and accounts themselves, the bills that are generated, customer accounts, customers themselves, tariffs and transactions are included, as well as vendors. So this means that if I want to know how the total accounts receivable is calculated, I can click here and see that it is the total balance where a customer is active and the balance is greater than 0. So it's just looking at the outstanding balances, not excessive credit that people may have paid. So how would we build this again? Let's try rebuilding this. So we see that our data source has been set to customer accounts. If I click the field, I can look at the data structure of what belongs to a customer account and what are the other tables it links to. And I know it was the balance. So I want the total balance, so going through all of the customer accounts balances in the system, but only for the active ones. So that's where I select total where. And notice I have the power of all of mWater's expression language here. So where the customer, so I jump into the customer table, customer status is active. So if any customers have been set to be inactive for any reason, they are not counted here. And in my calculation, I had that the balance is greater than 0. So there's some kind of outstanding fee. So that gives us this value of 179.6. And the same for these other values. Active customer accounts just counts the amount of customer accounts. Meters read is a little bit more complicated, looking at the transactions where there was a tariff, because that's a meter reading by definition. Similarly, we can edit maps, understand how we've defined these dates since the last meter reading, or whether a customer has paid up, so whether a customer account's balance is greater than 0 or not, using the location from the asset that we have mapped and connected to our customer. So you can see that all these building blocks come together and become ingredients for you to build custom visualizations. So then you can start doing anything you like with all of this data. Maybe we wanted to show something else, like the average meter volume, or something else by month entirely, like how many transactions were there for any given month instead of volume. So 10 transactions. And of course, you don't just have to edit existing widgets, you can add entirely new ones. Maybe you want a little table of the 1,000 most relevant customers here. You can do that by creating a table. Customer name, and then the total balance across all of their accounts, for example. Simple to do. You can order it, you can filter it, you can edit everything. So here, a lot of opportunities and possibilities become open to you, and the trick is to get familiar with the data structure. What belongs in transactions, what belongs in customers, what belongs in customer accounts, and how they link together, for example. So the transactions table, of course, includes all of the transactions at all. So you could look at transactions by date, how many transactions there were by date, or what was the amount of transactions, when was there lots of money movement being recorded, and so on. By year, by month, by exact date, and so on. So there's a great amount you can do. And one more thing, once you're happy with your customized console, you can change the permissions to share it more broadly or create a share link, and then go back to your water system homepage. And if you're an administrator of it, you can configure from here on the bottom, you can add custom tabs. So you can have your own analysis. All you need to do is paste this URL from the portal, the one that we want to add to our left side nav bar like this. And we will get our own option. Once we save, we see that the left side bar has changed and we have our own custom analysis console here. So this is where we have our extra table and so on. We know it's a different one. So you can actually hide the customer overview if you don't want the default one from here. If you don't want the default assets and customer overviews, you can hide them and use your own instead. So we urge you to just use what we provide as a starting point and build upon the flexibility that mWater grants when it comes to managing these things and all the powerful visualizations that we have available. And that covers in more depth the kinds of things you can do with our customer management, meter reading, and accounting features. Here's one more time, the guide. We took a look at setting up these modules, customizing bills, how permissions work, what types of data there are, how you set up tariffs for different types of customers, how you create customers in the app and in the portal, how you do bills, meter readings, and add vendors, and then how you import data, as well as the automatic reports and how you can create your own visualizations. All of this is also covered in our written guide. If you have questions or feedback, you can always reach out to us at problems@mwater.co or info@mwater.co in the video notes. Please do send us feedback. We're also very interested in any case studies, whether you are able to make your utility work more efficiently and effectively thanks to the features we provide and improve for you. We will keep improving these features and providing updates continuously. And in the future, we'll also add features for maintenance tickets and other kinds of workflows, as well as more options to do with water quality and customer feedback. Thanks very much for your attention. I hope this was useful for you. Stay tuned for further materials and be sure to have a great day.